Probably the one last thing on the list is language. Dolphins have shown that they can comprehend in an artificial language. Now we're getting into, is there order and structure to their sounds?
For decades, the ocean has echoed with whistles, clicks, and pulses we couldn't understand. Now AI has taken us closer than ever to unlocking the hidden voices beneath the waves. But what it uncovered isn't just about sounds. It hints at memory, culture, and an intelligence that doesn't look like ours. Could this be the beginning of a conversation across species? Or something even stranger? The answers are not what you expect, and they raise more questions than they solve. The long hunt for dolphin language. For centuries, humans have looked at dolphins and sensed there was more happening beneath the surface than clicks and whistles. Sailors spoke of them as wise companions, rescuers of shipwrecked men, and even messengers of the gods. By the 20th century, scientists replaced myths with tape recorders and hydrophones, trying to pin down what was really going on. What they captured was overwhelming. Endless bursts of whistles, clicks, and pulses, all layered together in ways that didn't sound random. It sounded like language. But how do you prove that? Early research catalogued the sounds like entries in a dictionary. A whistle here, a burst there, and patterns that seemed to match behaviors like hunting or mating. Some dolphins even produced what scientists called signature whistles, unique sound patterns that functioned almost like names. A dolphin could call another across the ocean, and the targeted animal would respond. That alone hinted at individuality, memory, and identity. Still, critics said it was nothing more than advanced signaling, no different from a bird's call. The challenge was always complexity. Unlike human speech, dolphin communication overlaps. A whistle might carry identity, while layered clicks might encode location or intent. Body movements, bubble rings, and even synchronized swimming added more layers. Imagine trying to learn a new language where every word came with hand gestures, musical tones, and maps embedded in it, all happening at the same time. Human linguists simply couldn't keep up. By the 1970s, a few pioneers tried radical experiments. John Lilly, a controversial figure in dolphin studies, believed dolphins might have full languages and even attempted interspecies conversations. His methods, though criticized, kept the idea alive. Maybe dolphins weren't just animals making noise. Maybe they were speaking. Yet, despite decades of recordings, nobody could translate. Biases among humans are indeed part of the problem. We expected dolphin communication to resemble ours, a linear sentence, with scattered words following one another in sequence. However, dolphins evolved in a completely different context. Theirs is a world defined by sound traveling through water, by sonar bouncing across reefs, by communicating over distances often measured in miles across the ocean. Their words didn't fall into neat lines at one end. They tend to overlap, harmonize, or repeat like musical bowed chords. The patterns are there, but without the help of technology, human pragmatism could not deal with them. This help finally reaches artificial intelligence. Previous people's studies relied on humans to pick out some obvious patterns, but machine learning could access incredible volumes of data, microphones with millions of whistles and clicks, all at once. Their rule was not to submit dolphin sounds into human grammar, but rather to seek out their internal logic. What sounds clustered together, which sequences repeated only during hunts, and what shifted when calves were present. The puzzle, little by little, started becoming visible. What were initially taken for random noise by scientists now resembled highly structured exchanges with the usual syntax, grammar, and context. Some whistles indicated individuals. Others indicated direction, time, or events. Repetition with variation was the biggest clue, the same one that underlies all human languages. When the first decoding was accomplished, the world had waited several decades for it. When the much longed-for moment arrived, however, it was more than a word or a phrase. It could be classified as something much larger, a conversation. Two dolphins off the shores of the Bahamas were doing a great deal more than reacting to the moment. They were planning, remembering, and coordinating. For the first time, scientists realized we hadn't been listening to noise. We had been eavesdropping on a civilization. First conversations beneath the waves. The ocean was calm when it happened, but the weight of the moment was anything but. After decades of speculation, trial and error, scientists finally heard more than sound. They heard meaning. The breakthrough came from a marriage of cutting-edge artificial intelligence, patient fieldwork, and thousands of hours of underwater recordings collected over generations. For the first time in history, humans didn't just record dolphins, they began to understand them. The key wasn't simply technology, it was perspective. Early attempts to translate dolphin sounds had failed because researchers forced them into human frameworks.
Being able to get such clear before and after data is the dream of any marine researcher.
We expected sentences, linear words, and grammar that mirrored our own, but dolphins evolved in a liquid world where sound carries faster, farther, and in multiple directions at once. Their language turned out to be layered, multidimensional, and rapid, more like music than speech. Only machine learning was capable of catching those patterns. Teams deployed swarms of autonomous underwater drones outfitted with wideband hydrophones. These didn't just capture whistles, they tracked them in three-dimensional space, tagging who made each sound, where, and under what conditions. The data fed into AI systems is trained not on human expectations, but on context. If a whistle always appeared during hunting, the AI flagged it. If clicks are paired with body rolls or bubble streams, it marks those correlations. Over millions of observations, patterns emerged. Then came the turning point. Off the coast of the Bahamas, researchers captured a full exchange between two bottlenose dolphins. To the human ear, it was just whistles and clicks, rising, falling, pulsing. But when processed through the new translation model, it revealed structure. The dolphins weren't just calling each other by name, they were describing fish schools, debating positions, and adjusting their plan to hunt more effectively. One whistle referenced a location, another signaled timing, while layered clicks conveyed subtle environmental changes like current shifts. It was not only instinct, it was a verbal conversation, planned cooperation, a memory shared, and a strategy in common. These characteristics previously looked upon as exclusive to the human tongue were now resounding from beneath the waves. The AI was not limited to the picking of random words. It mapped grammar conditional structures, tense markers, and even what looked like metaphorical elements. In some cases, dolphins seemed to refer to previous hunts aligned with future ones.
Now, I'm interested in dolphins because of their large brains and what they might be doing with all that brain power in the wild.
In other cases, they used symbolic phrases that hinted at more than a literal description. Might these stories possibly be lessons for younger pod members? The possibility of narratives through which dolphins may hand down their acquired experiences
Try to get a sense of their dolphin etiquette.
sent shivers down the spine of the research team. For scientists listening live, the experience was marvelously exciting and humbling all at once. All had been so nicely coiled within the very essence of the description that it felt like a discovery into the middle of a conversation that had taken place for millions of years without any human knowledge. Not suddenly, the sea was background silence. Now it was alive with meaning. However, the team was careful not to overstate. This did not demonstrate that dolphins speak in the human sense, nor anything related to philosophy or poetry. This evidence, however, was inarguable as evidence of something complex, communication that carried intention, nuance, and memory. Perhaps the most dramatic point from the paper was that they had tried to respond through carefully constructed yet non-intrusive signals with a typical greeting back to the pod in dolphin syntax. And it was not alarmed. It was curious. One even appeared to laugh, giving an answer that twisted the communication playfully, as if for the mispronunciation of humans. For the first time, two species were observing each other not from the outside, but were talking with each other, halted and hobbling across the gulf of existence.
Standing here talking for a long time. None of us have mentioned
abstractions.
Well, yeah, none of us have mentioned all of the things that are here.
It was the beginning of something unthinkable, a bridge between worlds built on sound and patience, opening the door to conversations that might reshape our place in the natural order. Humor, stories, and social rules. Once researchers began decoding more exchanges, they quickly realized dolphin communication went far beyond basic coordination. It wasn't just about hunting or navigation, it carried traces of culture, The AI models revealed conversations filled with humor, storytelling, and what appeared to be structured social rules, elements once thought to be uniquely human. One of the first surprises was laughter. In one recorded sequence, a younger dolphin used an odd whistle pattern to describe a fish that wasn't present.
To meet a remarkable group of dolphins that I've been working with in the wild for the last 28.
To human ears, it sounded like random noise, but when analyzed, the AI flagged it as a deliberate exaggeration, essentially a joke. The other dolphins responded with rapid bursts of whistles that matched patterns tagged as laughter-like reactions. It wasn't about survival or danger, it was play, a shared amusement that bound the pod together. This discovery suggested dolphins understood not just reality, but how to bend it for fun, an ability linked to abstract thought. Equally striking was the discovery of storytelling. In one exchange between two elder dolphins, researchers initially struggled to decode the meaning. It didn't map to hunting, migration, or territory. But when compared to other sequences collected months apart, a narrative began to emerge. The dolphins seemed to be recounting a storm from years before, describing waves, shifting sea floor, and the movement of fish afterward. There were references to individuals long gone, and metaphorical phrases tied to light and current. This wasn't just a description of the present, it was a memory, passed down as a story, perhaps to teach or preserve history. With these revelations, a sense of the marvelous began to emerge. Culture. If dolphins developed narrative to share experiences or remember past events, they were working in a tradition definitely akin to human orality. For the scientists, this now raised the uncomfortable but exciting question of they were listening to stories about life in the sea. Were they hearing myths fashioned from the very sea currents and the storms? And if so, how many generations of dolphins have carried on this legend?
Look at some of the tsunamis where the elephants are walking up the hill because they can sense.
Language displays astonishing social rules. The eye has shown that signature whistles, the dolphin equivalent of names, are flexible. Depending on context, a mother might have used another form of her calf's name, changing the tone and wind of the sound, reminiscent of a human parent calling a different name for their child. Friends modify or play with each other's names, whereas strangers stick to a full formal version. So, a name does not exist in a social vacuum. It carries connotations of context, intimacy, and respect. This suggests some code of behavior, some subtle rules about naming one another as a function of relationship and circumstances. Diplomacy also emerged here in the data, from specific encounters between podmates that historically would not engage in conflict. Dolphins exchanged phrases that equated to words of formula.
I set out to find a place in the world where I could observe dolphins underwater and to try to crack the code of their communication.
Likewise, they were repeated, structured, and even deliberate, an almost ceremonial address. We would not fight over territory or food, but would negotiate with ritualized language. As such, scientists compared it with peace treaties or handshakes, a peaceful acknowledgement of boundaries. The more researchers listened, the more it became evident that dolphin affirmation was not only functional, but layered with humor, narrative, protocol, and even ritual. This indicated a society capable of remembering, teaching, joking, and negotiating. This, in brief, contains many of the characteristics that make up such things as civility with us humans. For the team, this shifted everything. Dolphins were no longer subjects of study, but partners in an unfolding dialogue, one that suggested the ocean carried not just voices, but culture. Oceanic civilization, hidden in plain sight. As the AI decoded more dolphin exchanges, a startling idea began to take shape. This was not just an animal communication system, but the scaffolding of a civilization that had thrived alongside us for millions of years, hidden in plain sight. Humans had long measured civilization by the tools we build, the cities we raise, and the artifacts we leave behind. But dolphins left no ruins, no monuments of stone or steel. Their world was carried in sound, memory, and social connection. And now, piece by piece, that invisible architecture was being revealed. One clue was the scale of their news network. Researchers noticed that certain pods acted like hubs, relaying messages about shifting currents, predator movements, or fish migrations across hundreds of miles. The transmissions weren't simple alarm calls. They contained who, what, where, and when. information packaged for others to act upon. In human terms, this was journalism without paper, a living bulletin board spread through the sea. Another layer of civilization appeared in diplomacy. When pods with overlapping territories met, their exchanges followed ritualized patterns. These weren't improvisations, but ceremonial dialogues. The phrases are repeated in structure, acknowledging identity, intent, and boundaries. Instead of escalating to violence, dolphins used what looked like treaty language. It was an order without courts, a balance without borders, an elegant system of governance woven into sound. Education was also something that came through the data. In many sequences of older dolphins instructing calves on hunting, they didn't do just that. They structured vocal instructions about turn sooner, approach from below, wait until the school gathers. The calves followed, failed, and hence corrected, like a human student under teacher guidance. This properly spoke not of instincts, but of pedagogy, the conscious passing on of skills from one generation to another. Possibly the most deleterious evidence for civilization was an example of multi-generational stories. Some older dolphins sang long and elaborate strings of sequence pieces containing references to storms, migrations, or behaviors of other species. Such histories were modular, built from smaller stanzas, which could be rearranged depending on the context, ensuring that information on survival would last long after an individual's death. It was thus designed to be resilient, a type of cultural memory as thick as that in our own written traditions. All of that was considered even more amazing when contrasted with the way their surroundings directed the way they saw reality. Where humans tend to use sight and depend on solid objects, dolphins employ sound and fluid space. Their language encompasses sonar-like maps, shared acoustic holograms of underwater terrain. Such a sequence could convey a three-dimensional depiction of feeding grounds or safe paths across reefs. In this sense, dolphins did not possess one single language alone. There was a correlation corresponding to the very language, a cartography, a map of the ocean stored in their collective memory. To call this a civilization does not mean it mirrors ours. This is something entirely different, an oceanic society in which intelligence, history, law, and art are transmitted in vibrations through the water. No temples, no skyscrapers, no ships, but order, traditions, creativity, and continuity are all present. For centuries, humans searched the skies for signs of other civilizations. All along, another was swimming beside us, speaking in voices we failed to hear. What it means for us. The decoding of dolphin language was not just a scientific breakthrough, it was a mirror held up to humanity. For the first time, we were forced to consider that intelligence and civilization are not uniquely human traits. They have existed all along in the oceans, built on principles entirely different from our own. The first and most immediate implication was ethical. If dolphins are speaking in a structured, nuanced language, then they are not simply animals in the conventional sense. They are persons, non-human, but persons nonetheless, with the capacity for culture, memory, and identity. This raises uncomfortable questions about captivity, entertainment, and even fishing practices. Could we still justify holding dolphins in tanks or driving them into nets if we now understood them as fellow conversationalists? Legal scholars quickly weighed in, suggesting that dolphins might warrant rights once reserved for humans, rights to life, liberty, and protection from harm. Some argued this was not just an act of compassion, but a moral obligation now that we could no longer claim ignorance. Others worried about the practical consequences. What would it mean for global fishing industries, for aquariums, for centuries of human tradition? The debate remains unresolved, but the discovery has already reshaped the conversation. It compels us to rethink intelligence beyond all ethics. Human progress has been measured in tools and technologies, as well as monuments, and of course in art by generations. On the other side, dolphins show that a civilization can just as easily thrive without cultivation, architecture, and fire. Their society is verbalized through sounds, stored in memory, and molded by the tides of the ever-drifting, moving waters. One can interpret this such that the human model of intelligence-based object manipulation and landscape modification has been one of many possibilities. There are other blueprints as well, and dolphins are living proof. This also rewrites our search for life outside Earth. For decades, we have been sending radio waves across space to detect the mathematics of any other species. But today, we have come to understand that we might have ignored intelligence at home because it never made metal and never left ruins. Perhaps, if they existed, extraterrestrial civilizations would take forms that we cannot imagine. Dolphins are a reminder that communication does not manifest itself in cities or spacecraft, but in subtle languages woven into environments alien to us. This decoding has inspired something deeper culturally: humility. Until now, humans have believed they were the only narrators of history. Now, we come face to face with the possibility that dolphins may have histories, myths, and oral traditions all passed from generation to generation, down through untold ages. To talk with them is thus to enter an ancient dialogue already in progress, a conversation which itself predates human civilization. There is then the issue of the environment. If dolphins indeed carry culture, then their survival is not merely a conservation of wildlife, but the preservation of the other intelligent society. Climate change, pollution, and overfishing are now all burdens beyond compare. Drowning would silence the voices of the sea and wipe away all of civilization's history. It becomes more than a scientifically compassionate act. It is the act of interspecies diplomacy. What it means, finally, for us, is that we are no longer the only storytellers on this planet. We share this Earth with minds as curious and creative and complex as our own. In the end, decoding dolphin language reminds us that intelligence takes many forms, and listening may be humanity's greatest challenge yet. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, drop a comment with your thoughts, subscribe for more, and check out the next video on your screen.